Rounded with a sleep. I mean, the idea that our life is like a dream. I suppose so, yes. I mean, actually, I think it's the other way around. I think that when we die, or before we're born, it's probably more like a dream, and that it's as if our lives are rounded with a dream. And, of course, dreams are part of sleep, so that still fits with what Shakespeare says.
Dream before, dream after, what in between?
Well, waking life with more dreams and fantasies as well. But I think that the dream... Well, I suppose it depends what you mean by dream, but dream is entering into a realm of possibility, of fantasy, of imagination. And there's a sense in which all our lives are an interface between that and the life of embodied existence in the physical world. And I suppose part of the business of science is to explore that interface, because you could say scientific theories come from the dream realm. In fact, some of them come to people in dreams. But then there are many theories. When you test them against reality, you have to do experiments. And experiments are not quite so much like dreams. They're more like oracles. And I think the experimental method is best seen as a modern form of divination. You know, in the Roman times, people cut open animals and examined their entrails. Nowadays, scientists cut open animals and examine the physiology or whatever. You do an experiment, you look at some feature of the world, and you ask for an answer. This is just what diviners did and what the purpose of oracles was. So I think that the experiment serves the role of the oracle, and somehow these experiments modulate our scientific dreams, at any rate. They're subject to some kind of check, whereas the ordinary idea of a dream is that it's free, independent, and has nothing much to do except with one's memories and possibly one's future, one's desires, but is somehow unlimited by reality. Well, science is limited by reality through the experimental method.
What did they say about Voltaire? If Voltaire had not existed, somebody would have to have invented him. I think maybe the same is true of Sheldrake. I think there's a niche in our culture for Rupert Sheldrake. Extremely clever, I think completely wrong, but in such an ingenious way that it's fun to think about trying to prove what's wrong with it.
I don't know his work. Again, Rupert?
Rupert Sheldrake. He's from the UK, a biologist. The Presence of the Past, The New Science of Life, he wrote. You don't know him.
I'm sorry.
I love him as a human being. But he has a biological theory that I'm just convinced is close to totally wrong. But he's thought it through. He understands the philosophical basis of it. We're friendly adversaries. I once gave him a whole lecture of mine to express his views to my class. It was one of the most interesting classes we ever had. But I don't think he's right.
Rupert Sheldrake.
And so there again, I plead total ignorance.
He is the one with the holistic approach of reality, so to say.
Yes, no, well, I hate isms of any kind.
The things I've heard people report of his general position are things that I don't find congenial, but I don't know them well enough to be able to say why I don't find them congenial. I shall find out, I've no doubt. He's not... You know, one has to make certain investment choices, and his was one of the, he's one of the people who I've never just invested the time in.
He lives in Hampstead, the wonderful wooded, hilly part of London where Oliver Sacks once grew up. Rupert Sheldrake, cytologist and biochemist, is to have a hard time on the occasion of the meeting with the 5 others. As yet, I have no idea if and how he is going to survive that battle. He wrote, "I'll show you how my hypothesis of formative causation leads towards a new and radically different evolutionary view on ourselves and the world we live in." No beating around the bush there. And it is true, too. If Sheldrake's ideas about morphogenetic fields are ever proved, he'll be the new Darwin and Einstein rolled into one. The sting and the fascination are in that little word, if. Later that afternoon, we'll speak of Sheldrake's strange experiments. But we start off with circumventory movements, the fascinations of his childhood, for instance.
I was on the family willow farm. My grandmother's family grew willow trees for making baskets. And I was staying at the family farmhouse, and I was outside with an uncle. And I saw a row of willow trees with rusty wire hanging between them. So I said to my uncle, "Why is that rusty wire hanging between those trees?" And he said, "Well, we made a fence out of willow stakes, and the fence came to life." And I looked, and of course then I could see that each of these was like, you could see how each had been a fence post, and these wooden posts had formed shoots and roots, and it wasn't a fence anymore, it was a row of living trees. And this made, really a tremendous impression on them, because this sense of the dead things coming to life in such a vivid way that you could directly see. The whole thing lasting only maybe 10, 20, 50 seconds. I don't know how long this incident lasted. But when I remembered it, this particularly vivid incident, I then saw, both to my surprise and delight, and also to some extent horror, that in this childhood memory was summarized much of my subsequent scientific career. I spent years working on plant development, on the behavior of isolated stem cuttings, and a lot of what I did subsequently was foreshadowed in this particular memory.
Ever fantasized about being invisible? About getting to know it all and being able to change the world? No, says Sheldrake. About being able to read other people's thoughts? No, says Sheldrake. That our universe was an atom in the eye of someone in another universe, and that the atoms in our universe contained other solar systems.
I did, yes, I did actually. I don't know how many people have this, but I vividly remember when I was a child, maybe 6 years old, I don't know my age, I was lying in bed, it was in the summer, in my bedroom, and I saw the dust in the sunlight as it came through the window, you know, when you watch dust particles move. And I was watching these dust particles. And then the idea came to me quite spontaneously that each of those particles might be a whole world, like our world. And in those worlds there might be people lying in bedrooms looking at dust particles, and each of those would be a world. And so this idea of infinite, like Chinese boxes, worlds within worlds, stretching infinitely in both directions, large and small, suddenly struck me. I mean, this was probably the biggest idea I'd had in my life by that time. It suddenly an idea of such immensity, and it was quite out of keeping with all the other things I thought about, but suddenly this idea took hold of me, and I was very fascinated by it.
And now, because you were not unique, I had the same fascination, so I'm sorry, but this picture of universes within universes, like Chinese boxes, is there any development, or is the amazement the same and the conclusion the same when you're grown up?
Well, I wouldn't put it in quite the same way, but what I would say is that
But essentially...
since I believe in that the right approach to nature for science and in general is the holistic approach is to see that everything is nested within something else. Like the Earth is a unit, but the Earth is within the solar system. The solar system is a unit, but that's within the galaxy, and the galaxy is a unit, but it's within a cluster of galaxies. And then all these are together within the whole universe, which is the ultimate physical unit. And then if we come from the Earth, we have ecosystems that are units, and then societies, and then within those organisms that are units, and within them organs, and within those tissues.